I'm Patrick Watson. I'm an astrologer, and you're watching Big Fat Astro Vlog. And today I'm going to be talking about what Venus retrograde means for the month of October 2018 for everyone born with Taurus rising. So, here we go. I have no idea if that intro worked. Sorry, it was too loud. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about Venus retrograde. So Venus retrograde is one of the rarest planetary retrogrades. It happens 5 times every 8 years. When Venus is going direct, it sort of means what we kind of conventionally expect it to. Like it's generally benefic. It brings things together. It joins people together. It makes things beautiful, harmonious, makes things work together, makes things smoother, makes things sweeter, more pleasant. That's nice. So that's Venus, kind of what we expect Venus to be like. But when Venus goes retrograde, it's a little hairier. So when Venus goes retrograde, those kinds of associations are kind of askew. So all of these things which make life a little smoother and a little nicer and a little more pleasant are kind of flipped on their head a little bit. So what I mean by that is it's a time when people might abandon kind of what's conventionally proper or socially ordered or like proper etiquette. It's a time when there's like usually like sex scandals, when kind of the bonds of relationships can be broken. Sometimes it's when they come together. Sometimes it brings people together who you wouldn't imagine kind of going together. It's not what you typically expect, but they get together anyway. Or it can like challenge the boundaries and bonds that someone has in their relationship. So obviously that can be like extramarital affairs. It can be other sort of scandalous things things that like kind of make people go, oh! You know, it's trying to think of some really good examples. It's I mean there's a lot of examples. I mean, for example, you know, the whole Monica Lewinsky scandal was a big Venus retrograde thing. Last Venus retrograde well, it wasn't the last one, but in 2015, like there was that Ashley Madison leak where all of the men who'd signed up on this site to have affairs with women, like their information was released. And so you know, it tends to take these you know, what are typically considered like really nice things or good things like intimacy and relationships, and kind of makes them, you know, shows us another side of them, and a way that people kind of break these social norms or social boundaries. And we can kind of see that in the news right now. You know, the drama over the, you know, Kavanaugh and the sexual assault allegations and stuff. Like, that's very Venus retrograde to me. I mean, it's also very Venus Marsy, because, you know, we had that big Venus Mars Uranus T-square thing. So that's obviously, yeah, a big part of what's going on right now, because it's about, you know, the Venus-Mars cycle is about, like, you know, these transgressions of social boundaries and sexual crimes and stuff like that, and that topic. But with Venus going retrograde, it kind of gives a special emphasis to, like, the idea of something that is normally good kind of twisted on its head a little bit. It's you know, can result in some scandalous and interesting developments. So let's talk a little bit about what it should mean in your chart as a Taurus rising. So there's a couple ways we have to think about this. Number one, Venus generally represents that which you are like attracted to, your aesthetic sense, what you hold sacred, what's beautiful to you, all that kind of stuff. So it kind of has this natural kind of association with wherever it is in the chart. But for you specifically as a Taurus rising, Venus is also going to take on a certain role based on where the signs Venus rules fall in your chart. So for you with Taurus rising, Venus actually represents your first house, which is like you. So Venus, in some sense, as a Taurus rising, you are like Venus. I would imagine if you looked back at the various times Venus has gone retrograde, I'd imagine these would be fairly pivotal points for you, because Venus is essentially your ruling planet of your chart, so the planet that really more truly represents you. So Venus, in a sense, represents you more specifically, just overall as a person. But then Venus also represents issues of the 6th house, because that's where Libra is, according to whole sign houses. So not only does Venus take on this more personal role for you, but it also takes on, it acts as a representative for issues related to work, the ways in which you're of service to people, as well as the people who serve you. So if you have employees, or if you come into contact with employees of given businesses, waiters, waitresses, that kind of thing. In the olden days, it was slaves, but I think the modern equivalent of that would be, well, there's still slavery today, but not quite like it was anyway. You know what I mean? So, people who are in sort of subservient positions to you. It also rules injuries and illnesses. So, I mean, I guess for what kind of illnesses are there? I mean, I guess you could say venereal disease, right? Sexually transmitted infections and that kind of thing. I think that's sort of a more Venus-y type of illness, or things that involve the bladder and kidneys and that kind of thing, since Libra is associated with the kidneys, the midsection. Anyway, so Venus rules these two parts of your chart, kind of you overall, as well as the matters of the 6th house. And it's transiting through and going retrograde through your 7th house. And this actually has a much closer association to what we conventionally think of with Venus. You know, it's in the house of relationships and partnerships and the way you relate to others. So for you, this is going to be a time when the issues of like yourself and your identity, your image of yourself, is you kind of do things you maybe wouldn't think you would do. Related to Venus, and it has also to do with like people beneath you, or the way in which you're beneath someone, your work, your occupation, your duties, your responsibilities. Those things are also kind of taking an interesting detour here, with Venus going through the 7th and going retrograde through the 7th. I mean, it's almost like if you were single, maybe this is like a new social connection you've made at work, which might be improper, especially if it's like with an employee or with, a boss or something like that. So that's something that could potentially be an issue. It could also be that if you're in a relationship, that maybe your dedication to your work or your duties are going to cause issues as Venus goes retrograde through your 7th house. Maybe you have to kind of reevaluate, what you're doing with your time, and to make sure that you are balancing everything properly with regards to your work and, your sort of sense of self and your achievements, as well as your interpersonal relationships. So though in some way those topics are kind of connected, and those topics, it could be that, maybe, there's some imbalance or injustice or unfairness at work, or some sort of scandal or drama or gossip, and that, is causing you to have kind of a conflict of self in some sense, especially since Venus is opposite its own sign in Scorpio, and this is kind of like you going retrograde through your 7th and kind of backtracking a bit and thinking like, okay, wait, what am I doing now with my life? Like, it's going to be sort of like that, with Venus being your ruling planet. And if you want to get more insight into what this might mean for you, I mean, you can look back at previous times that Venus has gone retrograde in Scorpio, because it goes on an 8-year cycle. So you could look back at October, November of 2010, and Venus will be retrograde in that time. So I can actually just show you, like, 8 years before Venus was retrograde in Scorpio, and 8 years before that, in 2002, it was retrograde in Scorpio, and 8 years before that, in 1994, it was retrograde in Scorpio. So, if, depending on how old you are, you can kind of look back and see, if there are any sort of themes that keep popping up for you with Venus going through this part of the zodiac and going retrograde through this part of the zodiac. And I would imagine it would stick out fairly well for you, especially as a Taurus rising, with Venus being a ruling planet and going through an angular sign. I'd be fascinated to hear exactly what has been happening for you, as much as you can share publicly, obviously. Some of these transits can be pretty personal. But let me see if I have any questions before I go. I don't think so. Nope, no questions. All right, it's okay. I don't think people are really used to this format yet. I don't even know how many people are watching. I think 5 are watching now. All right, cool. Alrighty, well, let me know what happens to you during this Venus retrograde transit. Oh, I should mention that, it starts October 5th, and it goes till November 16th. So, we'll probably have to have another little chat about what the Venus direct station means, especially since it changes signs. But anyway, that's kind of what you can expect for the month of October with Venus retrograde. So, good luck with that, and I will talk next time. Bye.